All right. Well, I can see our guests jumping on here. The numbers are going up as we go. So welcome everybody. Welcome to this home working cybersecurity webinar. I'm Jim Preen. For those who don't know me, I'm Crisis Management Director at Udo Sentinel. And for those who don't know about Udo Sentinel, we make crisis management and crisis communication software. It's a bit of a tradition on these webinars to ask people to tell us where you're listening from. So, and it also gets you using the Q&A box. We quite often get people from India, from Australia, and all over the place. So if you don't mind, just pop where you're listening from, either the country, the city, the town, or whatever it is, into the Q&A box. And then I can also make sure the Q&A box is working, and to see where Heidi's from the UK. Heidi's not being any more specific about that. She's just from the UK, playing it close to her chest. And talking of the question box, I'm not going to reserve questions at the end for this webinar. I'd like you to post your questions. Oh, there's Alan. Hi, Alan. Alan in Clitheroe up there. I'm not going to ask for questions at the end. I want questions all the time. If you've got any, any comments you want to make about things that my guests say, or if you have questions for them, then pop them straight in the. Oh, here we go. We got Tony from Singapore. I think Tony's winning at the moment. We got someone in Cumbria. Yeah, Singapore. Tony, you're definitely winning the furthest away competition, if there was such a competition. And also, talking of putting questions to the guests, you can post your questions anonymously if you wish to do so, and that would be fine. Alison has just raised a hand there to say something. Alison, I don't know if you have something to say. Do you want to just pop it in the Q&A box? I'm not absolutely sure. Well, look, let's get underway now. Home or remote working is fast becoming the new norm, and I'm sure when the whole lockdown thing has gone away, it's going to proliferate. It's kind of a growth industry, it seems to me. And I'm doing it now. I guess most of us are doing it. We're working from home, but unfortunately, cyber criminals have sensed a real opportunity here amid the pandemic, and are launching a spate of attacks that exploit people's fear and uncertainty. And of course, when we're working from home, we don't have the kind of security protections that office systems afford us. There's no firewalls, there's no blacklisted IP addresses, and firms therefore become more vulnerable to cyber attacks. And according to a recent report that I'm reading here, home office networks are 3.5 times more likely than corporate networks to be infected by malware. So the question is, what's to be done? And we're going to try and answer that today. And what's to be done right now is for me to introduce my two guests. And hopefully you can see these slides. And they are Richard Stephenson and Scott Lever. And you can read a little bit about them there. And Richard, do you want to, Richard, you're going to have to come off mute. I can see you're on mute. Richard, tell us first a little bit about yourself, please, over and above what we've got there.
Hi, Jim. Yeah, I'm from the UK, and I'm the Chief Executive of Udo. So we've been on this fantastic journey in looking at crisis and how we can actually improve the communications in a crisis. So that was our mission. Our history really in Udo is we're great at doing online documentation, to mobile devices. And one of the things that we felt was that this was really important in terms of getting access to plans, action lists, etc. So we built this thing going forward. So I lead this great company of individuals who are based in the UK, but we have a lot of business in North America as well. So my background, I've got private equity on there. Sure, I've chaired about 6 private equity companies in my time, in financial services through to manufacturing, a range of different businesses. And what I like about the work that I do today is that I can empathize with companies because I've actually been on the other side of the fence and dealt with these sort of crises as well. So that's a bit of my background, Jim.
Okay, that's lovely. Thanks so much. Scott, what about you? Tell us about. I don't know much about you. We haven't actually met in person before, so I'd
No,
like to know more about you.
thanks, Jim. Also based in the UK, just in Hertfordshire, just outside London. I've been in IT and technology for about 22, 23 years. Left university, went to work for IBM as my first permanent job. Since then, been contracting and consulting ever since. I've worked pretty much in every sector you can think of: retail banking, investment banking, central government, parliament, local councils, retail, pretty much anywhere and everywhere. Kind of bounced around, 3-month contracts, 6-month contracts a year. So I do a lot of consulting work. I also have a small cybersecurity startup called Zobi, and we're building basically an intrusion detection system for home workers. So again, I've dealt my fair share of, we'll talk about fair share of crises, anywhere from helping small organisations to recover up to large enterprises and central governments.
Okay, well, that's fantastic. Well, we hope you're going to share some of your wisdom on how we can all work more securely from home from a cyber perspective. Before I get to my first question, I'm going to launch my first poll. I hope you can see this. I'm launching this right now. It's an extremely simple question, and also it may be a little pointless because I think I know the answer to this. Is how many people are working from? Are you working from home right now? And yeah, okay. I think anybody else going to vote? We almost, yeah, we're, oh yes, yeah, absolutely, we've got everyone there. So I'm going to end the poll, and I'm going to share the entirely unsurprising results with you. Is that yes, everybody is working from home. So well done, Jim. I'm not sure exactly what the point of that was, but there you go. So that's what we're doing now, and I wonder how, if in a year's time, is that still going to be true? I mean, that's going to be interesting, isn't it? We shall see. All right, there we go. All right, home workers, let's get underway. I'm just going to close that poll down now. Well, I guess it all happened so fast, right? I mean, 1 minute, I mean, certainly for me, 1 minute we were working in the office in central London, and the next we were working from home. There was hardly any time to discuss data security or privacy risks and so forth. It just happened almost overnight when Richard, in fact, announced that we would be working from home. But Scott, I'd like to turn to you first, because I gather that you were tasked with getting the staff of a large insurance firm working from home in just a few days. I'm guessing that was quite a challenge. Perhaps you could just share a few of those challenges with us, please.
Sure, it was absolutely a challenge and some very, very long days. So I've been doing some consulting for one of the UK's largest insurance company. We've got about 14,000 users and one of the largest call centres. I think there's about 5,000 people in the call centre. So I think the biggest challenge is, for years and years, the business has said we can't do home working. It doesn't fit our model, just doesn't work like that. For years and years, IT security said, sorry, we can't protect people when they work from home, PCI compliance, we just can't do it. So we had an 18-month program to look at home working, how we can do it, what we can do. When the lockdown was announced, we got asked by the senior leadership team of the company, how can you do this more quickly? What do you need? How long do you need? We said, well, if we strip away a lot of the governance and regulation, still meet the requirements, but
Sorry, Scott, can I just ask you, how far down the road were, it's interesting that this was under discussion. Were you far down the road on that, or was you just starting out?
I'd say we're about 6 months into it, but it was a slow 6 months. It was very much looking at devices for home workers, telephony, just cybersecurity, the whole thing. But it was a slow journey, kind of diligent journey. We kind of looked at what we could do, while still maintaining the regulation and security. We said, look, in 3 to 4 weeks, we could probably get half the organisation working remotely from home securely. We were then given the remit by the very top of the company. That's great. Can you get everyone working from home in the next 3 to 4 days, please? It was a bit of a challenge, but we did it. It was tough. I won't lie to you, but it was really good. And I'll talk a bit more about what we did later on. But I think the biggest challenge any IT department has in a large enterprise is, I want to avoid the word red tape, but it's the change control and the regulation. So you still have to stick to all that, absolutely, but there are ways to fast track it as long as you keep really good documentation and diligence.
Okay, that's great. And Richard, your firm, you do, which I'm a member of staff. I mean, we're now, I think, I'm not absolutely sure, but I think almost everyone is working from home. I'm not quite sure about the Lancashire office. What were your concerns? I mean, you pulled the trigger pretty quickly on this. What were your sort of cyber concerns about this?
Well, I think you know, we're a sort of ISO 27001 company, and I think that the point that Scott was just making beforehand is about, you know, compliance issues, was that how are we going to make sure that we don't breach any of these things that we've signed up to in terms of our processes and procedures? We're not a regulated company like the insurance company would be, or anything under the FCA. However, our concerns on cyber were really about whether we were going to ask anybody to use their own devices. And we also were concerned about that in many of our young staff are sharing flats or with other people in those flats. And so therefore, as we are dealing with clients who expect the data security and that technically our people can have access to some of their data, and we have various guarantees we do in our performance arrangements, is that we have to make sure that we have the right protocols to make and the as much as possible people with the right technology on their devices to prevent any unauthorized access to the clients. So my concern was really about whether by putting people working at home, we open a window to people to get access to data that they should not have access to. And that was the first InfoSec side that we had to do before pulling the trigger. And as you say, I pulled the trigger before it was officially required to do so, but it was clearly that was what's going to happen.
Can I just jump in quickly? Actually, Richard, you made a really good point there about flat sharing, home sharing, and so on. As much as you might be protected yourself, there's other people on your network potentially, some you know about, some you don't know about, and that's where a lot of the risk comes from. It's the unknown. You know, you could have the full whack security suite, but someone else could be unprotected sharing your Wi-Fi, and that's the way in. I think that's a really key point.
Yeah, exactly, and that's a risk. You know, when you think differently when you're thinking about at home, and often sometimes we think people at home, they're sitting in their own house with everybody who's known to them around them, but so many people are workers who are sharing flats, and we have to think about that environment, and people downloading games onto the network, which onto their own devices, which are less protected than the one you've got on your own network. So there are lots of issues, and therefore surveying and understanding the person's environment is a really important part to understanding the InfoSec challenges that we have.
Okay, that's great. Let's take phishing emails, phishing attacks, and so forth. A recent report found that there had been a 600% increase in reported phishing emails since the end of February. I mean, I feel I'm pretty savvy about spotting these things, but you know, I've been caught out a couple of times. Have you guys seen an increase in this? Scott, what's your thoughts on this? Have you seen more phishing emails? What can people do about this?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's very, very well documented in the news that phishing has gone up massively around the COVID, trying to extort money out of people. I think it's really, really hard to protect yourself against phishing. It's all in the details. You need to look at things like spelling mistakes, suspicious senders' email addresses. You know, I've heard people where they've received an email from somebody that looks like it's within their company, but the one letter has changed in the domain name. And I think also for companies with home workers, run simulations. The only way you're going to kind of train people is to catch them out. You know, I've done this across multiple organizations and there's plenty of tools out there that will send out simulated phishing emails that are real phishing, but don't actually cause any damage. They just come up with an alert saying, you know, this was a phishing attack simulation. You've been caught out. Click here to get some training or advice. So I think it's all in there. It's just diligence really over and above anything else.
Okay, Richard, do you want to?
Yeah,
go ahead.
I think that's right. I mean, I think it's very different with home workers than if you're obviously in your building that you're protecting people in there, because if you like, the threat perimeter now is so much wider. We've got people now working from home in an environment that the IT people really can't get an understanding of, and as Scott was just saying, is that ability to test people's ability to spot phishing emails by using these sort of tools to do that is a good way of doing it. But it's a general thing about education. The amount of education we now need to do across the whole company is enormous, because it's not, we only need 1 or 2 breaches in the wall, all right, for major damage to be done. And you can see how, therefore, the attackers have the advantage. They are just hunting for the person on the network that is slightly more naive than the others to actually find a way into the castle, if you like. So that one way of doing things. So it's not like we can easily defend everything, and therefore we have to continually educate people on what a phishing email looks like, what to look like, just as what Scott was saying, for what are the telltale signs. And that's not just a one-off bit of training, that's a continuous reminder. And therefore, I think companies have to up their communications to people to actually warn them of these and train them really on what to spot, as well as doing what Scott was just talking about, which in fact the IT people sending out these sort of phishing emails to see who clicks on them and then saying, hey, this person was caught. But they are very, very difficult, and some of them are beautifully targeted, particularly the ones that are, if you like, the spear phishing, the sort of the type of emails where they know an awful lot about you, Jim, and you think that must be correct, you know, because how could anybody have that secret that I've locked away in my life for 20 years, you know? And but you know, it's like that thing. It's that confidence issue, that social engineering side that's really dangerous.
Yeah, I would just to, if I may, just jump in a second. One thing we do at UDO, which I think is great, is we use Slack. I don't know if people use Slack, but we find it pretty useful. And we have a Slack channel which is purely for used for phishing emails. We share if we receive a phishing email, we share them there so that people can see the type of thing that's going around. I mean, Richard, we found that pretty beneficial, right?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, we set that up early on, so because it's actually one thing to give them instructions, but actually what you're finding is everybody's just posting the latest thing. People who are less technically savvy can just look at that and realize, oh my goodness, that could have happened to me. So over time, we're educating people to say what to spot for. Yeah, and that's worked pretty well. Scott, you were saying?
Yeah, so I was just going to add, just for those that don't really understand phishing and how it works and the impact of it, and looking through the eyes of a hacker, what a hacker will do is if they're using a phishing email to get your credentials and your password, for example, don't just assume they're going to go and attack you that day. Most cyber attacks happen about 60 to 90 days after they've received your credentials. You would never know what happened. You know, you'll put in your credentials. What they might do is get into your emails in a week or two, start looking at the way you talk, the way you interact, and then use that to kind of really get a focused attack on you. So yeah, I think it's something like 9% of attacks happen 60 to 90 days after the breach.
Wow. Okay, I certainly did not know that.
No, I think, Jim, just the other point is that it always amuses me when I read about somebody putting out a press release about a cyber attack that's taken place on their thing. And they always, the PR company who's dealing with that always makes a fantastic statement saying, we're not aware of any of the information that's been stolen that has been used in a malicious way. Right. Well, Scott's point is exactly right. This is storing things up until you have the perfect time. The time they make the hack is the time when your defenses are just lowest. The day before you go off on your annual holiday, the 4th of July. They think, everything is designed to give maximum damage. So whenever they put the statement out, say we're not aware of anything being used maliciously, that's because they don't need to use it straight away. They've got the tools. They're going to take their time.
And also the most challenging part of any cyber attack for any business or individual is forensics. It's relatively easy to detect an attack at some point. It should be simple enough to defend yourself, but to actually work out what's gone missing and the timestamps, it takes a lot of effort.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I just to get get our audience involved here. We haven't had any more questions yet, guys. So do pop in some questions. Go and really challenge these guys are meant to be the best in the business, Scott and Richard. All right. So give them a hard question. But what I'm going to do now is I want to see whether you've noticed. I'm going to launch a poll. I'm launch one of my pointless polls. Here we go. So can you vote on this poll? Have you noticed an increase in phishing attacks and other suspected cybercrime activity? I'm guessing again we're going to know. So a few more we need. Yeah, 50% of people voted. Please, all of you, if you could all vote, that would be fantastic. 60%. Are we going to do better than? Oh, we got 70%. Any last dibs on the voting here? Last dibs on the. Oh well, it's okay. I'm going to end the poll now and share the results. Entirely unsurprising. Can you guys see the results? I think you can. Can you? Yeah. So entirely unsurprising. So well done, Jim. Another pointless poll there, but yeah, we can all agree that
you ought to run Trump's polling.
Yes, thank you, Richard. Thank you very much for that.
Get 100% on everything.
100%, 100%. We're not getting into politics. Thank you very much. All right, so we are going to move on though, and we're going to ask you this question. What about I've talked about this in the past with people. I'm never quite sure about this. What about the Internet of Things? How much of a vulnerability of it? It says here, and it's absolutely true. Just down the corridor there is my kitchen. And I've got Alexa sat there, which we use all the time. Are we right? You know, is Jeff Bezos listening in? I guess he's not. But Scott, give us some thoughts about the Internet of Things. What do you think?
I think a really key point here is, as of probably the month or two ago, before that, there was no standard security platform or methodology for Internet of Things. It just didn't exist. Everyone did their own thing. The UK government are now trying to do a secure by design, which is kind of like an approach for all IoT or Internet of Things developers to start following. So that's a massive step forward. However, so there was a leading cybersecurity company did a scan of 52 million IoT devices across 16 million homes, and they found that 30% had already been hacked or were vulnerable to easily being compromised. So there is absolutely still a massive, massive risk. If I look specifically at Alexa, so Alexa's probably a bad example, is absolutely one of the more secure platforms out there. However, there was a company that I think it was about 2 months ago now. So the way the Alexa works very quickly is obviously you talk to it, it listens to conversations. Imagine you're talking and that's a sound wave. So what they did was from 100 feet away in the bushes, they got a laser pointing through a window, oscillated the laser to basically replicate a sound, and they gave the Alexa commands, things like, you know, unlock the front door or turn off the house alarm or anything like that. And that was effectively, while no personal data was stolen directly, somebody could have control of all your smart devices through your voice command. And that's not specific to Alexa, that could be any of the voice-activated assistants. So it was quite an interesting attack vector.
That's a very interesting attack. Yeah, you know, because I know that, you know, sound waves, we were talking about, you know, one of the ways of spying on conversations is for people to fire a laser at the window, you know, and you just pick up the whatever's been said inside the room. But this is the reverse idea, where you're actually then getting the window, if you like, to vibrate and create the sound, you know, or whatever it is, the surfaces. But that's an interesting point. I think, Jim, there is this thing about IoT has been an unregulated area. I did notice, I think yesterday, the National Cybersecurity Centre announced, the government's announced that there's 400 million pounds to develop, you know, all these standards and things and ways of which are making IoT devices more secure as a competition. So I think the government recognises it's a major problem. I think we've got to worry about having home networks which have got these type of IoT devices in, or any other devices, things. And I think one of the things about working from home is that you really, the best sort of thing, Scott would probably be the best person to comment on that, but to our view is that you should be trying to use a router that was only for business, and then something that you're using for all your private and gaming should be another platform, another system, rather than mixing it on the same router. But I think one of the problems about, there's so many things you can buy now, whether it be from Amazon or whether it be from any store that is in fact IoT enabled. And of course, these aren't, you know, these are bought on price. And if you look at the ones that are probably massively secure, they're much more expensive to buy than the ones that are, you know, Chinese and rather unprotected. And people will go for price, because most of the public won't understand that level of vulnerability and how that can actually compromise their system. So we have a problem where people will, but the general public really is not educated. And I think what Scott was saying beforehand, by having a standard, it means that retailers will have to conform to sell products that actually are complying with that standard. But we haven't been there yet, and an awful lot of IoT devices have been plugged in that aren't secure. And what I think, Scott, it might be worth you saying what can happen. So what could happen if someone hacks your system or breaches the system? What sort of bits of software could they put in there that could compromise somebody?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's various different use cases for attack on a, and I'm going to avoid using the word smart home, because a smart home is not really what we're talking about. We're talking about a connected home. So anybody that has broadband and 2 or 3 or more devices effectively is a threat. So I think there's a few things. So I'm going to start off with the biggest one, cyber terrorism. So what you don't actually realize is, out of those 30% of IoT devices that have been compromised across the world, they are controlled by mafia and organized crime, and they're used to target. So when you see news about things like the FBI website being taken down and companies being taken down, a lot of that, to generate the amount of traffic you need on the internet to do that, is actually coming from millions of homes across the world. Organized crime don't have the budget or the supercomputers to generate that kind of load, so they're using other people's devices. Another thing is, once you're on a home network, you can start scanning the network, looking for vulnerabilities. You can get family photos. You can turn on webcams without people knowing. You can even, in some cases, you can even control people's pacemakers if they've got one that's Bluetooth enabled, and you've got a Bluetooth. I can go on for hours and hours and hours, but the main one is cyber terrorism, listening to your private conversations and stealing your data, which they then use for identity theft. Those are kind of the biggest selling items.
I might add just one more thing, is the installation of keylogging software, which is one of those things that if you're actually going onto your corporate networks and typing your passwords in there, that keylogging software would say, we'll take whatever your password is and pass them back in. That can be overcome by 2-factor authentication, but a lot of people don't have 2FA. But that's another danger I would add.
Yeah, I think you make a good point, actually. One of the biggest risks at the moment with obviously so many people home working is, I bet there's a lot of people, and we surveyed a couple of thousand people and found that roughly 50% use the same password for home devices and home accounts as they do for work accounts. So once you compromise a home network and a home device, and you've got that password, you've then got away into the corporate network. Yeah. Cool. Jim, you're on mute.
Jim, you're on mute, I think. Yeah.
I am paying attention, I promise you. There's just a few things that I have to do here. There's a lot of questions and things coming in now. Alison is asking, how can you identify if your devices have been hacked? Any thoughts on that?
Do you want me to take this one, Richard?
Yeah, I'll take it, yeah. So,
at the risk of upsetting what my startup is doing, it's very, very hard at the moment. So on a home network, at the moment, it would be, technical word is an intrusion detection system. So a device that monitors the home network and looks for suspicious activity. So a compromised device could be one that's scanning the network or putting data off things. And at the moment, there's only a handful of devices out there. And actually, that's something we're building now that we're pre-launching. And effectively, it's a device that sits on the network, anonymously captures all the data, and then looks for suspicious activities. It's all about human heuristics, network traffic, pattern recognition, and so on. It's very, very hard on a home network to identify it. In the enterprise, there's solutions out there, but they're hundreds of thousands of pounds upwards. In the home, there's very, very few options at the moment.
Okay, that's great. Just a couple of things have come in, and I think actually you wanted to talk about this a little bit, Scott, as well. But Alison has said that NCSC, the National Cybersecurity Centre, have a new suspicious email reporting service available now. So if you don't like the look of something, you can report that to them. And talking about hacks and so forth, Steve has said this, some good points made already. Classic example was the attack on Copeland Borough Council over a bank holiday weekend, oh, this is, yeah, not discovered until the Tuesday after, and took months to recover from a massive impacts, financial and on the welfare of staff as well. Now, Scott has asked me to launch another poll, and I hope I've got this right, Scott. You want to know this, and I'm going to launch the poll without further ado. Have you ever changed your router password? Guilty.
Yeah.
Get the guilty man is here.
So this is one of these things where, yeah, so everybody gets their new Wi-Fi set up, the new router, and they change the Wi-Fi password, but hardly anyone ever changes the root administrator password, and there's only a set number of them. So if you're on BT or Sky or Virgin, it's relatively easier for a hacker over days or weeks or even months to brute force and keep trying.
Because they use the same password in a lot of different routes. They don't use different. I see.
Number them. And once you've got control of the router, you can see everything that goes on the network, the whole traffic.
I think, Scott, I should employ you to do my polls in the future, because this is a bit more interesting than the results of my polls. So here's the result. So it's 50-50.
That is, there's more people saying yes than I thought, actually.
Yeah?
That's quite interesting.
All right, good. All right, well, there you go, guys. Well done. So we've all got to run away. How do we do it? Can we give a quick lesson? No, I guess we don't. But it's pretty easy to change it, is it?
Yeah, it's relatively easy. I mean, if you look on the back of the router, there's normally some instructions on how to connect to it. And it's normally connecting an internet browser to an IP address and then logging on. And the password is normally stuck on the back as well.
Okay, all right, great.
And I would say, the thing I would
sorry,
say
Richard, yes.
is that the speed at which you do this is really important, because it's not that say, oh, well, I'll do it sometime or other. When you have a new device, you have to pretty well do it straight away, because you've got this automatic scanning bots that are actually looking for unprotected or looking for factory set passwords. So I would say, Scott, you probably, it's almost like default thing when you open the package, when you, etc. You don't want to leave it even an hour, etc.
Actually, I read a statistic that every device that connects to the internet has an attempted hack on it within 3 minutes.
Within 3 minutes, something like that. Yeah, it's massively classic, Jim. So that's the key point. And there is some amazing bits of software around. Everybody thinks, how is anybody going to find my router to do it? So I think is it Shogun or something, which is one I've used beforehand, which finds all unprotected devices or things, etc.
There's various tools. I think that the key point there is hackers don't think of hackers as individuals trying to attack. It's thousands of networked computers or millions of network computers around the world searching and doing automated attacks, and then a lot of the time there's no human interaction at all. There could be a hacker bot that just captures IP address and captures data and then puts it for sale on the dark web. I mean, you can buy, I think it's 1,000 IP addresses of vulnerable routers for about $10.
Okay. All right. Wow. Okay. Fine. All right. Good. Let us move on here to another question. Well, we've talked about this a bit, haven't we? Yeah. Some staff will be using their own devices, and oh yeah. Okay. Let's ask about document encryption. Is that something we should be considering as well, please?
Well,
Richard. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah.
I should. Yeah.
I think that encryption is a general subject we'll talk about, but documentation encryption only really applies to things that are sensitive, like banking documents or things that are and I think so it doesn't apply to you reading your glossy magazine or anything else that's not sensitive. But I think that there's two parts of that. One is sort of obviously transferring any sort of data across the net should be done using secure protocols, using HTTPS encryption. But I think more importantly is that when you see a lot of these hacks taking place on servers and things, is a lot of the time is that the information is not encrypted at rest. That means that on the actual servers, all of the special information and particularly documentation are not encrypted. And therefore, once they're into the system, they can actually read at will. So I think that we're definitely seeing a trend where people are insisting, certainly for cloud-based systems, etc., is that their documents that are sensitive ones are encrypted at rest as well as crypted across, and many of them are actually encrypted on the device. Of course, you can't read an encrypted document, so it's got to be unencrypted for you to read it, and that's where the the vulnerability comes at any point where you're reading it. But I think, we've got to put those documents into the bucket that are sensitive ones and say that all of those documents should be encrypted. Medical records should be encrypted at rest, for example. I actually I was asked the other day to sign up for my local GP surgery with this particular app to get information there, which I sort of did. And I then discovered that the company was doing it was actually then going to be transferring my medical records from my GP surgery onto their servers.
Wow.
And I then went through their terms and conditions as a bit of a nerd to see what they were doing with this. And I could not see anything to say that my records were going to be stored in an encrypted form. So then I sent an email to the data protection officer on that thing to ask them whether they had their documentation encrypted at rest. And that was 10 days ago, all right? And I have not had a reply yet from them. So to me, just from my point of view, I want to know that if my medical records are actually being held by a private company, what level of security do they have in place to make sure that other people don't get hold of it? Not that saying anything particularly interesting in my records, but for some people it would be a big issue. And so I think documentation, certain documents should be definitely encrypted at rest.
All right, Richard, thank you. Scott, I think you want to say something about backing things up and so forth. You want to jump in there?
Obviously, encryption is a big deal for personal documents. Sensitive data, really important. Just as important, though, is having backups. So I can't tell you how many times people have stored things locally and lost it. I'm a big advocate of cloud storage, things like Dropbox and SharePoint and Box and all these Google Drive and all these kind of things, because you get the revision history. So if you lose something, it's still there. And actually ransomware, whereby a hacker will encrypt all of your files, even if they're already encrypted, will encrypt them again, and you can't decrypt them without paying them several $100s. That's where backups come in. And I don't know if you remember a few years ago, the NHS had a massive cyber attack. And what that was a ransomware where basically all of everything was encrypted and they couldn't access any of the data anymore. Now they had backups and so on, and any good enterprise should. But actually, as individuals, we should all have our data backed up. Gone are the days of just having it on a USB stick. That's not a backup. Just look at cloud computing or multiple copies of things. That's really, really important to me.
And I think it's the length of history as well, because if you backed up and you were relying on, say, the last week or etc., it may well be your backup includes the malware. So you need to be able to have that going back so you can restore from much further back where you've got a clean copy of your data. It's not just a simple matter thing. So, you can be facing total disaster if you haven't got a backup operating.
Anyone sat there listening, thinking about all the things they've got on their desktop, on their computer, which isn't backed up to iCloud or Google Drive or anywhere, now's the time to sort it out.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, good. I've got a great question here for you from Alison. I think she's. Well, you guys are meant to be really good, right? So you're going to have no trouble with this question whatsoever. What are the views of the panel on the security on the new track and trace apps from the government for COVID-19? Come on, what do you think, Scott? You got something on this?
I haven't looked into this massively yet. Actually, I'm. The whole getting past the crisis and COVID and so on is almost, to me, possibly more important than a little bit of personal data, as long as it's not sensitive. So I believe that whoever's designing this app will think about privacy very carefully. And I think as long as you've got the app on your phone for the tracing and the call centers are compliant with GDPR and the other data regulations, then I'm all for it. Okay,
Richard, have you been digging into this? What's your thoughts on this?
I have looked at it to a degree, because we're sort of, at the moment, we've got a little project for our own track and trace system for our clients, basically, because although the government track and trace system works, we believe that companies and organizations will need to do their own track and trace. And so, we need to know whether an employee or someone who works in the building has got COVID-19 or not. And therefore, what we're doing is looking at that side of things. So the security side is important, but it seems pretty invasive, first of all. Something that if you said this outside of the crisis situation, that we are going to be automatically picking up the details on people's phones that are close to me, who I don't actually know. That's something which, you know, we would have said, no, bridge too far. You can't actually have devices which are picking up other people around you. But they are putting in some pretty good levels of security. I agree with Scott. In the balance of risk, okay, I'd say it's much better to be able to trace people and to warn you if you've been in contact with someone COVID-19 than it is for the elements of privacy. I know the National Cybersecurity Center has been intimately involved in looking at this and testing it. These guys are pretty red hot. And I would say that the first test that were done on the Isle of Wight, there were 1 or 2 vulnerabilities that were picked up. And those things have been patched as far as I'm aware. And that's the idea of doing a trial. So I wouldn't lose any sleep on it. And as you already heard, that I'm one of these highly suspicious characters. I'm very happy to have that app on my device, if that helps.
All right. Oh, yeah, go ahead, Scott.
I'll just quickly add to that. If you've got Bluetooth enabled on your phone and it's discoverable, and you've got your social media on public view anyway, you're probably giving away more personal data than the track and trace app ever will.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I think it's quite interesting. I guess we're getting a little bit off topic, but privacy doesn't seem quite so important when lives are at risk. I mean, people were uncertain whether people would follow the sort of lockdown procedures, and I know there's a lot of discussion about that, but basically we have. So I think hopefully people will go along with it. Just a couple of things. Scott asked me to post something to you all. It's the NCSC, the National Cybersecurity Center. They've put out some good stuff. Scott, is that right, on secure home working? I've not looked at this yet. It's good stuff there.
Really good. I mean, there's 4 or 5 really simple steps that everyone should be taking from.
Oh, okay, great.
It's all on there.
Okay, great. And Scott has kept me busy as well, because he wants another poll, one of Scott's famous polls, which I'm now launching. And if you can read that, I hope you can. Do you know? And Scott will explain the reason why he's asking this question. Do you know what devices are connected to the internet at home? And just an anecdote from my point of view. My wife and I are working from home. My daughter's doing A-levels here. We're all on everything, and sometimes the internet. I've sent them all out, so hopefully the internet will work for this webinar. But you know, we sometimes go around like, who's on the internet? You've got to shut down some of this stuff to make it work. And you suddenly realize that iPad that's just sat there, that's, you know, already connected. I'm not techie enough to know how much of a difference that would make, but do people know? So as everybody know, come on guys, you've got to vote some more on this. We've only got 30.
I'd even go further in the question and say, you know, not just your own devices. How do you actually know if a neighbour's using your Wi-Fi? How do you know if there's not a physical burglar going past your house every day, connecting to the Wi-Fi to look at your devices to see when you're at home, when you're out of home?
Oh, I see. Oh, right. Okay. We've almost everybody's. I'm going to close the poll now and launch it, launch the results. So hopefully you can see. Well, they're fairly confident. Our illustrious audience, Scott. They're obviously cyber savvy, bright, smart, good-looking audience that we have. They think that 75%. I know exactly what's on. Do we believe them, Scott?
No, unless you're looking at the router to see, or you've got an app that shows you all the connected devices, it's very rare for people to know what's actually on there and how many you've got. You know, most people that we ask how many devices you have, even for households with 2 or 3 kids, always say, you know, 6 or 7 devices. When you actually add it up, it's almost always 20 to 30 or above, because you've got smart TVs, voice activated, Wi-Fi boosters, laptops, tablets. I mean, on and on.
Okay, all right.
Well, I've just done Richard, a little quick survey, Scott, because I've got something that actually tells me this. Yeah. And I thought I would have said I've got about 6 things. I've got 21 devices.
Wow. Whoa.
I've got 59.
Right.
So, I don't know how many I've got. I think you win.
So, you know, that is telling me I've got 21 devices on here. So, and as Scott's saying, you know, this is my TV, this is some other IoT device, and a number of different TVs, you know, and different iPads people are using on the system.
There's always more than you think.
There's much more than you think. Yeah.
Guys, let's move on. It's astonishing. Goodness, we've done 45 minutes. I hadn't even noticed. So we need to get through a few questions. Any thoughts on antivirus tools? Is there anything you would recommend? Scott, could I turn to you on that? Anything you would recommend on antivirus?
Yeah, so I won't recommend any specific products. I would just say antivirus is really important, but it's only part of the solution. So antivirus really only protects endpoints, so computers, some tablets, but mostly computers and laptops. That's what it's there for. It doesn't protect anything else on your network. So antivirus is absolutely important, whether it's a free one or premium version, but there's so much more to protect on the network than just those devices it covers. Don't think that antivirus and even a firewall is all the protection you need. It's far more than that.
Okay, great. Richard, do you want to add to that, please?
No, I just say, I reinforce that point. It's a multi-layer approach you need to take place of things. The only problem about it is people think sometimes that I've got antivirus software installed, I'm fine, I can do anything I wish to do. That isn't the case. And it gives you sometimes a false sense of security, but you definitely need to have good antivirus protection on your devices. I would say this just as a general point, Jim, is that, and I think Scott touched on it a little bit beforehand on terms of what he was doing. Sorry about that, I should have switched it off, etc. Was that when people moved out to do this rapid move out to work from home, and some of the figures massively impressive, as Scott's experience with the insurance company, is that basically any regulators were giving people a pretty well a free pass to say, just get going. We're into the state now where all of these, like the financial regulators things, are actually coming around and saying, okay, well, that was okay for emergencies, but now there is this real need for dealing with all these issues we've looked at. So the regulators aren't going to give us a free pass forever, and they're wanting now to see proper cyber hygiene and proper surveys done. And one of the companies we work to, Fortress, does actually do that and goes into people's homes and checks for all of these things. And I'm sure Scott's got some great software that does this, but all of this stuff is going to have to be tightened up over the next period of time. We just got through the first period of COVID. Now, they're not going to give us free pass. They want a very good level of cyber security that's been running at home.
Okay, that's great. Thank you very much, Richard. I've just had a question in from Sheila, and I think this is a great question. It's just what we're all thinking in a way, and maybe my experts can help with this. Would my children surfing the web, Xboxes, phones, TikTok, etc.? I know what TikTok is. I've got a teenage daughter. There you go. While I'm working from home, would all that activity compromise my security on my work laptop? Good question. Scott, you're going to go with that? You're the home security.
Sure.
Yeah.
So in short, yes. A slightly longer version is, so the activity they're doing online doesn't necessarily compromise your work laptop, but if they visit a website or they get malware on one of their devices, that device could then scan its way through your home network and get onto your corporate laptop and into your corporate work from there. So yeah, absolutely, it's a risk, and it comes down to detection. You can never be 100% secure. The only way to be secure from cybercrime is to be completely offline. That is the only way. It's about detection and response and knowing when there's an issue and a threat.
Okay, Richard, do you have anything to add to that, please?
I'd add to that, and that's the reason why the point I was making beforehand. If you are dealing corporately, it's often best to have a complete separate router than actually sharing the same router with the things all your kids are doing. And I make another point about kids is that we've now got laptops which are exposed to kids, or iPads, etc. We certainly have people can send out crisis communication alerts to the whole company from an iPad on our system, and we certainly don't want a 4-year-old pressing the wrong button. So things like biometric access and things to critical areas of the devices, and really important that they have procedures which mean that things go to sleep very quickly, so kids don't get access to it. We're in a very different environment to in an office environment. So
yeah, and it's easy to forget that as well. I know. We, as the eagle-eyed amongst you will have noticed, this webinar is being run on Zoom. Zoom, one of the great success stories of the lockdown. But we also know that the thousands of Zoom credentials have been found on the dark web, and we know about Zoom bombing, which we haven't had on this webinar, thank goodness. Any thoughts, Scott, on Zoom security? Or, you know, we're gonna be dealing with this stuff. WebEx, it's not just Zoom, I mean, but you know, all these platforms. Have you got any good advice for us when we're using this?
That's a great question. It's actually one that's quite close to my heart. So I have 3 young kids at school, and there was a big debate at school about which video conferencing platform to use. Zoom was one they were looking at. There was a lot of people saying, "Oh, it's not secure. I've heard all this," and you know, this one's not secure, that one's not secure. So let me start off by saying no system is 100% secure or foolproof. That's just the nature of the internet and evolving threats. I personally feel all the Zoom bombing and all the news and media about Zoom is over-exaggerated. There's kind of a few really simple steps you can take. Password protect your meetings, lock your rooms when everybody's inside them, enable the waiting rooms so people can't Zoom bomb and dive in, so you have to let them in, and make sure you tell people when you're recording for privacy. If you do those 3 or 4 things, you're absolutely fine. That's
100%,
really
Scott. I think that's fine. I don't think there's any problem with Zoom. And we've been using Zoom for, not just now, but we've been using it for the past sort of 4 years or something, or 3 years. And it's proved to be a pretty good platform. But the last update they put up, which is about 3 weeks ago, has fixed any of these sort of potential flaws pretty well. But we always use the waiting room so that, you know, you have to let people in. And this Zoom bombing happens when people can just come straight into the meeting. So I think that school, you know, would be fine. I think most schools would be fine with doing it. We deal with Singapore, and we do find that some of the Singapore schools have sort of stopped using Zoom because they had a Zoom bombing incident. But in general speaking, I think it's a good platform.
Yeah. I think I'd just very quickly add is when you're choosing a platform to use for video conferencing or any software, the way to spot the good ones are not the ones that are necessarily the most secure, it's the ones that respond quickest to a breach. So Zoom, for example, you know, when it was announced there was a security hole in one of their components, they fixed it within days. And that's the really key thing. There's some companies with great products out there, but very non-responsive to challenges like that.
Good. All right, guys. Well, we're sort of getting there now, aren't we? But let's just get, I guess there needs to be some process. If a member of staff working from home has their computer nicked, or they're worried that their sort of cybersecurity might have been breached, there needs to be some kind of process for those involved. Richard, could you take this one? How would you scope this out for us, please?
Yeah, we've often talked about saying that it's about all the protocols and the sort of software you have running. But of course, we've got a physical device here. We've got USB sticks knocking around the place. For companies, you should be using encrypted USB drives, for example, and those should be issued by the companies. There should be generally a policy of not using any, user device in USB sticks for storing information. They should be fully encrypted. And I think that if you're running on laptops and Macs, for example, like this Mac-top, is making sure that your drives are encrypted. And that's really all of the issues is all about encryption. It makes it much more difficult. I think that knowing that if anything does get stolen, which is possible, I mean, we've seen people in the Ministry of Defense leave laptops on trains, or there was actually a person who went to the loo close to the National Cybersecurity Center, who was working for the National Cybersecurity, who left his laptop on the bar while he went to the loo, and it was then nicked. You can imagine he lost his job the next day, by the way. You know, there is the physical risk of losing that information. So proper protection, you know, password policy, I think probably Scott can do. We recently had a sort of red team attack pen testing on our systems to see, you know, how good it was. And one of the things was just forcing a much stronger password policy on devices is really important. So, you know, we've got some very valuable information that's on these devices, so we have to make it really difficult. And if they get lost, we have to have the ability to remote wipe and to be able to get the IT people knowing that something has gone missing straight away. It's really important from the protocol point of view. USB sticks worry me, you know, and because they're so small, people can see them suddenly gone missing. Nowadays, you can get a 64 gig one, which looks like a tiny little device, is small, and it can easily go missing without anybody knowing about it, you know. So we have to have protocols. Again, it comes down to training, like phishing training. We have to be at training about use of, looking after your hardware and making sure that it's protected. And that's part of this audit that has to be done to make sure that people have got sort of the right encrypted devices and the right using it. It's more difficult if they're using a bring your own device, than it is in fact a corporate device. And that's where, people have got to pay attention if they're using those type of devices. Scott, you probably got something to say on that.
Yeah, so I think a few things. So just picking up what you said about passwords, just for the audience awareness. So the future is actually passwordless. So passwords obviously a big thing for now, and it will be for several years. But eventually, it's going towards biometrics and passwordless and tokens and keys and so on. That's just one thing to be aware of. But I'll just say that every company that stores and manages personal data has to have a data controller by law, and every company should have a 24/7 reporting line where you can report data breaches or losses and so on. Even whether you're a small business of 2 people or an enterprise with 100,000, it's still the same. There's just kind of three buzzwords, I suppose. One is resilience. So, if you have an attack of some kind, or you lose data, or you have an outage, have you got a backup system? Business continuity planning, which is if you lose your IT and it's going to be out of action for an hour, a day, a week, a month, whatever it is, what's your backup plan? And you should have all these documented way before you get attacked. And finally, is instant response, a major instant response. So when you do have an attack, it's almost like you should have a black book. You open up a playbook that says, "Oh, we've got a problem. What do we need to do? Who do I phone? What do I do?" And it can be anything from quickly change all your passwords, phone the bank, cancel the mandate, whatever it is for your specific use case or company. Just have that playbook ready, because it's not a case of if you'll get attacked; it's when you'll be attacked.
Yeah.
Okay, that's great. Just for the audience, guys, if there's anybody needs to ask any more questions, you need to do it now, because we're going to be closing this out fairly shortly. To my two guests, can we summarize a little bit here at the end? And Richard, I will turn to you first. What are your top tips? What are the top tips for improving remote cyber working, please?
Well, first of all, that these need to be permanent now, because we're now going to be into this new working environment where a lot of people who've gone to work at home are actually going to be at least partially returning, or not returning at all, to the normal office environment. So the fixes need to be thought through very carefully and permanent. The top tips really is about educating the staff. This is continuous education about the vulnerability to phishing attacks, which is one of the main tools being used. And so that's something which the corporate body has to take on board, that continuously raising the knowledge up. So that's one very important point. And I think doing home audits, doing audits of people, exactly what the environment's like, what they're using, etc. This needs to be done pretty fast, because as you said, Jim, in the beginning, the number of attacks on private networks has gone up dramatically. So companies need to get on top of this, get home audits, and get the patches and the fixes in as soon as possible. And probably the last point is that I think that people who are working on a corporate network should be considering running their corporate work entirely separate from the private work they may have in their own environment, and I think, and therefore installing another router that's specifically for the corporate work. So those are the sort of 3 main points that I'd make.
Okay, that's lovely. Scott, what are your top tips, please?
I've got kind of four things. One is common sense. If something's too good to be true, it probably isn't true. Second thing is keep all of your software up to date. If it's a security patch or an update, just update it. It's going to be good and worth doing. Third is think about how you would detect a data breach and how you respond to it. And then fourthly, you should really be using a different password for everything you can. So there's loads of password managers out there like Dashlane and 1Password. They are worth their weight in gold. I mean, I don't even know my passwords, because they're all encrypted in a password manager and they're all this long. and that's really important. You just have to basically keep passwords separate, especially for personal work.
Yeah, I use that Dashlane one as well. I have no financial, I haven't invested in it, but yeah, I use Dashlane as well, and I must say I do find it extremely helpful. Password managers, yeah, get a big thumbs up from me, that's for sure. Sorry, Scott, was there anything else?
I think those are the main ones, to be honest.
All right, guys. Well, I think we are there then. So I'd like to, I think this brings the webinar to a close. I'd like to thank you both very much for that. Some great stuff that I certainly didn't know about. So thank you very much to Richard and Scott for that. I will just say that there will be a recording of this webinar put up on the Udo website, Udo Sentinel website. If you know of anybody who you think it might be useful, who want to take a listen to it, so that will be up certainly by tomorrow. And the next webinar I'm running, which will be next month, I'm going to be running something I've done before, but I'm quite excited to do again. I'll be running a crisis simulation exercise on that webinar, so you can all get involved with figuring out a crisis and how you would get out of it. But for now, folks, thank you very much for joining us, and that's it. Goodbye. I'm going to close it down.
Thank you. Thanks, Jim.
Thanks, everyone.
Cheers.